Good afternoon. It's Friday, the 10th of July. I'm Erin Viner, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. The Iranian nuclear negotiations in Vienna today twisted from claims of progress to a blame game as Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif accused Washington of shifting its demands. He also dismissed warnings from the United States that it's ready to walk out of the talks as counterproductive. Hours after those statements, Zarif met with U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry in yet another attempt to resolve differences standing in the way of a landmark deal offering Tehran sanctions relief in exchange for long-term and verifiable curbs on nuclear development. Tougher rhetoric from Zarif is mirroring the reported frustration on all sides as the current round of talks enters its 14th day. After blowing past 2 extensions, negotiators had been hoping to wrap it up today, but the latest comments from the Iranian foreign minister are casting further doubt that agreement is near. By failing to seal a deal by midnight Washington time last night, the amount of time that Congress has to review any deal was doubled from 30 days to 60, during which time U.S. President Barack Obama is not permitted to waive any American sanctions imposed on the Islamic Republic, where the Ayatollahs have threatened that no nuclear rollback will be implemented until the complete lifting of the punitive economic measures. Kerry is now cautioning that the Americans cannot wait forever to resolve this dispute.
We would not be here continuing to negotiate just for the sake of negotiating. We're here because we believe we are making real progress toward a comprehensive deal. But as I have said many times, and as I discussed with President Obama last night, we are not going to sit at the negotiating table forever. We also recognize that we shouldn't get up and leave simply because the clock strikes midnight. And I emphasize, given that the work here is incredibly technical and that the stakes are very, very high, we will not rush and we will not be rushed. And we won't let ourselves be rushed through any aspect of this. All that we are focused on is the quality of the agreement. And that is what will continue to define our work. If in the end we are able to reach a deal, it has to be one that can withstand the test of time. It is not a test of a matter of days or weeks or months. It's a test for decades. That's our goal here. And the simple fact is that despite all of the progress that we have made, and it's real, some of the tough issues remain unresolved. We know that difficult decisions don't become easier over time. And one way or the other, those decisions must be taken very soon.
At the same time as the nuclear negotiations are being held in Austria, tens of thousands of Iranians were chanting "Down with America" and "Down with Israel" during annual pro-Palestinian rallies throughout the hardline republic. As part of the Al-Quds Day observance, protesters set fire to American, British, Israeli, and Saudi flags after wrapping them around pillars. The event has been held every year during the Islamic holy month of Ramadan since the 1979 Islamic Revolution. Local leaders say that the occasion is meant to express support for Palestinians while emphasizing the importance of Jerusalem for Muslims. Controversy is rising over the revelation that 2 Israeli nationals are being held in Gaza amid reports that the government liaison may have pressured the family of one of the missing men, Avraham Mengistu, to remain silent. Hamas is joining the fray by taunting the Israeli authorities with claims that a racist platform is driving their lack of action. We'll get more from IBA's R.A. O'Sullivan.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel has been acting for a long time to bring back the 2 Israeli citizens who crossed into the Gaza Strip and vowed Israel would save no effort to bring them back to the country. But the liaison officer he appointed to coordinate with the family of one of the Israelis, 28-year-old Avraham Mengistu, was plunged into controversy after tapes revealed in which Lior Lotan threatened the family not to criticize the government and that linking his Ethiopian ancestry to the so far failed attempts to negotiate his release would cause Mengistu to be left another year in Gaza. Lotan apologized to the Mengistu family for the remarks, and his wife accused the media of lynching him by taking his remarks out of context. The Prime Minister is scheduled to meet with the family at this hour. Defense Minister Moshe Yaalon said that Israel sees Hamas as responsible for the fate of the two Israelis and that Israel was doing many efforts to bring them back to the country. Avraham Mengistu crossed into Gaza last September for unknown reasons. It happened at Zikim Beach, 2 weeks after Operation Protective Edge ended. An IDF radar detected him, and a patrol ordered him to halt. But he was already on the Palestinian side and fled toward a group of Gaza fishermen and disappeared. Hamas claims that they questioned Mengistu when he first entered Gaza, but let him go. They had no comment on the Israeli Bedouin. Yet Hamas took a sardonic swipe at Israel by posting a statement on Twitter saying, obviously, the real Israeli motto is, leave no Ashkenazi man behind. The Bedouin from the Negev village of Hura infiltrated into Gaza just 3 months after Mengistu. He had in the past crossed the border repeatedly, but this time he disappeared. His family has said that he has mental issues. An Ashkelon court lifted a gag order on the saga of the two Israelis yesterday, and security officials say that making this public knowledge could help spur negotiations to gain their freedom. Ariel Sullivan for IBA News.
A group of border police officers managed to thwart a terror attack last night when a knife-wielding Palestinian attempted to stab them near the Ras Bidu checkpoint in northern Jerusalem. The officers fired warning shots in the air after noticing the 17-year-old assailant approach their post in a suspicious manner. After he dropped the weapon, he was immediately arrested and taken into custody, where he has confessed to having planned to attack the officers. A moving memorial service was held last night for Max Steinberg, the 24-year-old lone soldier from the United States who was killed in action during last summer's Operation Protective Edge. His father, Stuart Steinberg, memorialized his eldest child by saying that not a day, not a moment passes when the memory of his beloved Max is not on his mind and in his heart. He said that the past year has been filled with so much emotion that it was difficult for him to put into words the total impact that Max's death has had on him and the entire Steinberg family. Hundreds of mourners, including Max Steinberg's Golani Brigade commander and comrades, filled the military cemetery on Mount Herzl in Jerusalem. Steinberg's mother, Evie, wore a necklace bearing the symbol of the Golani Brigade, as well as a chain with her son's dog tag around her neck. While addressing her son's grave, she said that Israel adopted him and the entire family, and that he will forever live in the hearts of millions in Israel and around the world. His brother Jake also spoke about how much he remembers Max over the past year.
I felt like Max in many ways is more alive now than he ever was. And so it brings truth to this quote. I think that any time someone thinks about him and lives in a certain way or does a deed that is beautiful and for other people, that is Max's life. I think anytime we have his thoughts and, we breathe it in thinking about Max, then, we're breathing Max through our lungs and our heart beats, and it's Max's in our chest. And coming to Israel, it's just a completely emotional but inspiring feeling. And you guys are all amazing. And Max knew what he was fighting for. We all know what we're fighting for here. And I love Max. And I got the best role model any younger brother could ask for.
Another memorial was also held last night for Sean Carmelli, who was also a lone soldier who was killed during Operation Protective Edge. The funeral for the 21-year-old former resident of Texas was extremely moving when 20,000 mourners came to honor the young man who came to the country on his own without his family after heeding the call posted on social media by the Maccabi Haifa Soccer Club, of whom Carmelli had been an avid fan. Carmelli's grave has become a point of pilgrimage for many over the past year who've come to pay their respects to the young man who gave up his life for the country. Several months ago, Carmelli's parents moved to Israel, saying that they wish to be close to their beloved son, in addition to their 2 daughters who live in Ra'anana. The world's longest-serving foreign minister, Prince Saud Al Faisal of Saudi Arabia, has passed away at the age of 75. The prince retired earlier this year from his post, which he held onto for 40 years. Prince Saud was a fixture of Middle East diplomacy, representing the oil-rich Gulf powerhouse as it wielded its influence in many of the crises shaking the region, ranging from the civil war in Lebanon during the 1970s and 80s, as well as through the numerous rounds of Arab-Israeli peace efforts, Iraq's 1990 invasion of Kuwait and the subsequent Gulf War, the 9/11 al-Qaeda terror attacks in 2001, American invasion of Iraq 2 years later, to the Arab Spring uprisings, Syrian civil war, current tensions between the Arab Gulf bloc and Iran, and the spread of the Islamic State. His death was announced on state-owned media after midnight last night, although no cause of death was released. The prince underwent multiple surgeries in recent years, including several for his back, which left him walking with a cane. And now turning to the Greece financial crisis. And after months of procrastinating, despite the impending chaos, Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras met a midnight deadline with more than an hour to spare by delivering a series of sweeping reforms and proposals to his nation's creditors in efforts to secure a deal that can stave off an economic collapse. The Greek parliament is now slated to hold an emergency vote later tonight over the government's bid to win backing for the latest austerity plan. Meanwhile, finance officials from the European institution and the International Monetary Fund are today reviewing the package of reforms ahead of its expected assessment by the 19 Eurozone finance ministers tomorrow. Under ideal circumstances, a summit of all 28 European Union leaders would then be able to approve it on Sunday. The proposal has raised hopes that Athens will be able to set up a rescue deal to prevent a catastrophic exit from the Eurozone. In a significant reversal, the government caved into demands for a new round of belt-tightening measures that are said to include hikes on sales tax, as well as cuts in state spending for pensions that were long resisted by the left-leaning Tsipras government. Many of the proposed reforms are even reportedly harsher than those that were resoundingly rejected by the Greek public in a bailout referendum held last Sunday. But the government says that in return, it intends to seek a commitment from the creditors to negotiate further measures to restructure the long-term national debt. In other Middle East developments, the number of Syrian refugees who have fled their homeland into neighboring states has now passed 4 million. When making that announcement, officials from the United Nations Refugee Agency said that most of those seeking shelter from the fighting in a civil war are in Lebanon, Jordan, Iraq, Egypt, and Turkey, the last of which has absorbed the highest number of 1.8 million Syrians. The representative of the UNHRC in Jordan is appealing for the international community to do more to help with the humanitarian crisis.
Refugees are fleeing the biggest humanitarian tragedy that we've seen in our lifetime, and we need to make sure that they're not forgotten. So one of the reasons why we are commemorating this 4 million mark is to put the attention back onto the Syrian refugees and say, look, there is millions of people outside of Syria who need help. There's even millions more who are inside Syria that need assistance, and the international community is not doing enough.
Prominent attorney and journalist Ronell Fisher will be released to house arrest following nearly 3 months of detention after being indicted on bribery charges. The decision follows the High Court's overturning of a lower court ruling to keep Fisher behind bars until the end of the proceedings against him. Under the terms of his release, Fisher will stay at his mother-in-law's residence while wearing an electronic wrist monitor. He's also reportedly been forced to mortgage his 2 homes to provide sufficient collateral. The move comes in spite of warnings from the state prosecutor that Fisher may attempt to tamper with the case while outside of police custody in unforeseeable ways. There's been widespread outrage over remarks from Religious Services Minister David Azulai, who earlier this week called Reform Jews a disaster for the nation of Israel, whom he said he doesn't consider to be Jewish. The rabbi later attempted to qualify his remarks by saying that those who follow the reform stream are Jewish, but sinners. Among the many critics of the minister's statements is the modern Orthodox chief rabbi of Efrat, Shlomo Riskin.
I don't know any Rishon, I don't know any Posek who would claim that if you don't keep mitzvot lachalutin, you are not Jewish. That's not the definition of Judaism, and it's never been the definition of Judaism. Those who supposedly keep Torah and mitzvot 100%, it's not clear that that's so 100%. Unfortunately, we have too many examples, even most recently, about people who are supposed to be keeping orthodoxy 100%, and they either end up in jail or in trouble because their ben adam l'chavero doesn't come near the ben adam l'makom. And more than that, the way they look to be externally has nothing to do with the way they are internally. I have a notion that Olam Haba is going to be very much like a masquerade party. And people will take off their masks the masks with which they live in this world. And all of a sudden, Elyonim yiyu tachtonim, the tachtonim yiyu Elyonim. And those who everybody thought would be upstairs will be downstairs, and who everybody thought would be downstairs would be upstairs. It's not for us to judge, it's for God to judge.
So do you think Prime Minister Netanyahu need to fire the Minister of Religions?
Prime Minister Netanyahu must rethink the fact that he sold the store of religious Zionism away to the Haredim. That's the real difficulty, because the Judaism that sometimes is expressed, especially in this case, is not the Judaism of Kiddush Hashem, is not the Judaism of sanctifying God's name, much the opposite. And the mistake was made when Misrad Datot and so many other things were given away to the Haredim, the choice of judges and things of that nature, which is a tragedy, because we need judges who have compassion. We need judges who understand a little bit about psychology. We need judges who have compassion for women as well as for men, and especially for women who require a divorce and their husbands aren't giving it to them. And we were doing pretty well, and then the rabbinical judges and choosing the rabbinical judges were given completely over to the Haredim, and it's a different kind of judge which is now being appointed, and it's a tragedy. So I think the Prime Minister made a terrible mistake. This is only an example of that mistake, but it should be corrected very quickly. And that, by the way, I must add, is the tragedy when religion becomes so intermixed with politics.
The Tzohar Rabbinical Organization held its annual summer conference here at the Jerusalem International Convention Center this week, where the organization's overseas coordinator, Rabbi Reuven Spolter, told Arutz Sheva that one of the group's key activities is worldwide outreach.
If Tzohar is going to be a rabbinic organization, it's important that it's an international organization and that there is a sense of ownership about what goes on in Israel around the world as well. For that reason, it's important that rabbis and people around the world know about the things that we do, but are also involved in the efforts that we're making in order to make Israel a more Jewish place and a more welcoming place for all Jews. And that includes Jews who are living around the world. Jews coming from anywhere need to feel that Israel is their home. And the efforts that we do are trying to make a push in that area to try to make Israel more welcoming for Jews wherever they are.
And so you find yourself balancing between the needs of halakha, Jewish law, and the requests that you receive from around the world?
The core value, of course, is halakha. We are an organization that's devoted to the Torah, and the values of the Torah and the halakha guides us. At the same time, we have to use the guides of halakha and then try to find ways in order to help people within the guidelines of halakha prove their Jewishness, find meaningful Jewish experiences. Every chuppah that we do is chedat v'chedin, but that doesn't mean that even in the context of a beautiful, wonderful halachic chuppah, we can't find meaningful experience for them that's meaningful to even someone who comes from a secular background. That's what Zohar is all about.
And now to this fiery romantic story in the northern city of Tiberias, where 26-year-old paramedic Nadine Joubran was dispatched to the scene of an accident after receiving reports that a firefighter had fallen from a hydraulic ladder. After rushing to the scene, she was shocked to find it was her boyfriend of several years lying on the ground, surrounded by his fellow firemen. 35-year-old Pierre Aboud then pulled out a sign asking her to marry him. After realizing that he was uninjured and the entire incident was a setup, Nadine agreed to not extinguish the flames of their love and quickly said, "I do." So whatever happened to the traditional kneeling on the ground and a ring? In financial news, the shekel today ended the trading week with a mixed performance. And due to the closure of the stock market on Fridays, here's a look at the closing numbers for the week. The IBA weather team tells us we can expect another beautiful summer day tomorrow with no significant change in temperatures. Here's the forecast at home and abroad over the next 24 hours. Thank you for being with us this afternoon. We hope you'll join us again tomorrow, and Laura Cornfield will be here to bring you the latest breaking news from Israel. I'm Erin Viner, wishing you a great evening and Shabbat Shalom from Jerusalem.